it's pretty natural to try really hard to avoid pain. There is no beauty without pain. It's not so much pain that ruins relationships. I think a much bigger issue is confusion. I think we got to take a step back, and you've got to decide what your goal is in the relationship. There's a difference between pursuing peace in a relationship and pursuing intimacy or trust in a relationship. I mean, two people understanding each other is like borderline miraculous.
Welcome to YWAM Dunham's podcast. We're so excited. I have with me Matt Dawson. He'd been here for a couple of days, but he's going to be teaching for a week on the theme of relationships, how to have godly relationships, and all the things that coincide with that. So, Matt, I have a couple of questions for you.
Bring it on, Seth.
When was this theme of relationships, like, when was that something that you realized is something that needs to take notice in our lives as Christians? When did you realize that this is an important thing that we need to talk about?
Probably when I started going through some really hard things in my relationships. The background, I suppose, for me, before that is I grew up in LA, and so some of my earlier childhood memories, my dad is a white New Zealander, and I grew up in the predominantly African-American community in LA, which was an amazingly rich, beautiful, cultural, upbringing that also came with it some really challenging dynamics. And so, we were kind of a bit of an oddball family in that context. And some of my earlier memories, some of my earliest memories are, how old am I in the 92 riots? So I was born in 83. So I'm like 8, 9 years old. Yeah. And I'm watching on the news, we're not allowed outside, because of the riots going on all around us. This is after Rodney King gets beat. Rodney King gets beat by these 4 white cops, like right next to my old school that I went to. So it's all happening right around us. And we're huddled around the TV, and I'm watching the 7-Eleven that I used to go to after school every day with my best friend Sam to get Slurpees and chili cheese dogs. I'm like watching that on the news, boarded up windows, and the guy with the machine gun on the roof, like protecting his 7-Eleven. And so, we had there was a lot of interracial dynamics, and Dad had to explain to us what was going on. It's like there's hundreds of years of pain here that as a white family we represent. People who look like us have caused these people profound pain. And so that's definitely, I think I learned, and even my older brothers went through some really hard times. My oldest brother, David, went through some really, really painful years that caused all of us a lot of pain. There was drugs and gangs involved. He got radically saved, and touched by the love of God at an early age at the end of his teenage years. And so I guess those are sort of the early experiences. But then, showing up in YWAM and just wanting to be involved in all kinds of cool Christian projects going on around the world, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, in those first few years of doing Christian ministry, everything's awesome. I'm just a single dude working crazy hours, just absolutely frothing to be a part of something as cool as YWAM and these different projects. And then, a few years in, Cora and I get married, we have our first child, and then like some stuff goes down that, with people I love, that I'm like, that's not cool. That's really, really painful. How do I know how to navigate it when everything's fun and awesome, but how do I work through conflict? I didn't really, we didn't learn much of that growing up. I'm the youngest of three boys. Our version of conflict resolution was ignore each other for a week and then pretend it didn't happen, if something happened between us. So trying to actually resolve conflict in a healthy way was something I entered my adult years with virtually no grit like tools for. And so we went through some really painful stuff. And then of course, Cora and I in our marriage, the first 7 years was almost weirdly easy. We just agreed on most things and had the same values. And then we went through our 8th year of marriage was really, really hard. Some stuff happened that we just could not see eye to eye on. And so so at that time we needed help badly. And we realized like we are not getting through this on our own. We felt like, man, we're part of the global family of YWAM. We have access to some of the best teaching on relationships. I mean, I can literally call Dean Sherman, who's like a mentor uncle of mine. I can call him and say, Dean, help me out. You know what I mean? We have access to all this stuff, but for whatever reason, no fault of Dean's or anybody else's, we still felt like the teaching that was there, it didn't quite meet us where we were at. It just didn't meet us where we were at. And so we began to wrestle with what it looks like to heal trust when it's broken. And what we experienced was so profound in our connection with each other and our connection with other people that we've walked things through with, conflict. We just felt like we've kind of discovered gold. It's all in the Bible. It's not anything new, but as with anything in the Bible, it has to be remined and with fresh language and fresh cultural understanding. And so it just basically became a huge passion of ours to learn and to help others.
Nice.
There you go. What was that?
Thanks for that. Yeah. No, I mean, throughout the beginning of what you're talking about, you're talking about pain and how pain is consistent within our relationships when we choose to love people. How do you feel like what is the role of pain in our relationships? Is there place for it? Is it meant to be there? Is it not meant to be there? Like what is the relationship there?
That is an awesome question, Seth. I love how you put that. When we were talking about this stuff, we often refer to the fact that it's pretty natural to try really hard to avoid pain. But there is no there is no beauty without pain. There's nothing good, that's out there that doesn't necessarily have an element of pain. Like I just met you a few days ago. If I asked you what your favorite movie is, you would tell me something. You would tell me a movie that with a storyline that definitely involves some pain. That if it didn't involve any pain, that movie would completely suck and no one would be interested in it. So pain is definitely a necessary part of what we journey through in close relationships, for sure, I'd say, and it's very redeemable. So what we center in on is helping people understand that it's not so much pain that ruins relationships. I think a much bigger issue is confusion. So confusion is what really wreaks havoc in relationships. Confusion is unlike pain. Confusion is totally unredeemable. There's no redeeming factor of confusion. It just wreaks havoc. And so it's amazing, honestly, the pain that we can endure when we have a grid, when we have clarity as to what we're going through and why. One of my childhood friends, guy I went to school with, his wife passed away from cancer. He's about my age. I just turned 42 a few days ago, and his wife passed away from cancer, a few years back. And in that last 5 or 6 years, they've got like 3 kids. and there his wife is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And you'd think, wow, that would just ruin his, that would have destroyed their relationship. It was actually pretty amazing to watch the beauty of their connection. And he had his own between him and the Lord. He had his understanding of what he was going through and why, and what he was hoping for. And so, there's something totally profound and beautiful and peaceful, all the fruit of the Spirit, actually, in the midst of all of that pain. Was it painful? Oh, excruciating. Was it confusing and chaos-inducing? Not really, because of the way he positioned his heart on the way through that. And so, yeah. But as I said, the opposite, or the same can't be said for confusion. So that's where a huge focus for us is on communication, is on basically two people being able to actually really understand each other. And it's amazing how much it's like, oh, okay. Doesn't necessarily make it any less painful. Like, it might be a little less painful. Like for Cora and I in our relationship, there's moments where it's like, okay, at least, at least one of us might say to the other, thank you for helping me understand what you need. That is not a need I'm going to meet. It's not going to happen. And it's like, ouch. Like, whoa, really? Ouch. Like, I was really hoping you would be able to meet that need of my heart. But hey, I didn't marry a being of infinite capacity. I married a human being. But it's amazing how that clarity comes through. And does it ease the pain? A little bit. It definitely doesn't take the pain away, but it means that we can be at peace and we can understand. It's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to need a plan. I'm going to need a plan for how I conduct myself in the midst of that reality that need is not going to get met. It hurts, but it's part of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Like it's not necessarily what we need is the absence of pain.
Yes. Yeah.
When you say confusion, you touched on communication. Does this also include like things like disconnection and stuff? Can you give examples of what you mean by confusion? Like what can create confusion? What confusion really is in a relationship?
Yeah, sure. In really simple terms, what the heck is going on between us?
Yeah.
What in the world is going on inside of you, and what in the world is going on inside of me? People often, when they reach out to us for help, or one of our mentors, it's like, can you please help me figure out what the heck is going on between me and this person? I'm lost. I don't really understand what's going on. Did I do something that offended them? Are they going through something did I trigger some trauma in them that actually has nothing, but it's just me being me, in my cultural dynamic, of who I am and my personality. Are they the problem? Am I the problem? Are we both the problem? What the heck is the problem? Is there no problem? Am I making the problem up? I don't get what's happening here. Am I feeling the wrong thing? Am I feeling the right thing? Why do I get so angry at this stupid thing? Why can't I just, anyways, you get the picture. Like, it's the sense of confusion around what is happening, between us. And so I always say, if I can have clarity on the inside of me about what's happening inside of me, that's a good day. Like that. In terms of, there's two halves to every relationship, right? And so on a good day, I'm doing a really good job of stewarding clarity and manifesting the fruit of the Spirit in my half of this connection. And so yeah, I guess, does that answer your question in terms of when I say confusion? It's really, that lack of where is the opposite of that would be, okay, I was hoping that you would, wanted to marry me, and you don't want to marry me, because you're not ready for that. And that hurts. But there's nothing, but I've got clarity, it's like, that hurts, but it's not confusing, I might go, well, why the heck don't you want me to, why don't you want to marry me? Aren't I an awesome guy? Okay, well, it's like, maybe I can get even a little bit more clarity on that. It's like, I don't want to, I'm trying to think of a really, really tangible example. I don't want to be sexually intimate with you because you told me 2 days ago that you're looking at porn online. It's like, okay, that's clear. That's nice. That might suck. That might I might wish that wasn't the case, but at least there's nothing confusing about that. There's clarity about that. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the communication has to flow, but for two people to be able to actually, two people understanding each other is like borderline miraculous.
Yeah.
And the more sensitive it gets, the more difficult that is. The closer the topic is, whatever the topic is, to your sense of identity and self-worth, the more challenging it is for two people to be able to hear each other and really understand each other. But I definitely think it's possible, with good communication, for sure.
When you're talking about good communication, I hear what you're saying, like to be really brutally honest with each other, like I even hear, well, I don't want to be sexually intimate because I've been watching pornography,
Yeah, sure.
You're telling the truth, and there's nothing being held back.
Yeah.
So do you feel that there is such thing as too much communication? Do you think the truth should always be told no matter if it causes pain and hurt? Like, where do you think that line is?
Well, I think we've got to take a step back. Great question. I think we've got to take a step back, and you've got to decide what your goal is in the relationship. So, the short answer would be no. It's definitely not always the right time to communicate the truth, every truth in every direction. It's got to, that's why I love that, Scripture talks about speaking the truth in love. And then we also have some pretty clear descriptors as what it means for something to be loving, hoping, believing the highest of all of those things. So you've got to combine that. What does it mean to speak the truth in love? And that's not always simple and straightforward. That has to be wrestled with. What does love and truth look like right now in this relationship, in this particular moment with this person? But something that we have found incredibly helpful is the idea that, coming back to the reality that there's a difference between pursuing peace in a relationship and pursuing intimacy or trust in a relationship. So Scripture, Paul makes it really abundantly clear. He says, insomuch as it depends on you, live at peace with every human being on the planet. And that's a pretty confronting thing. It's like, if, it's really up to you to manifest the spirit of peace in every relationship all the time, even when you're treated terribly. A contentious relationship necessarily involves two people. So, it only takes one of us. I believe I can have a relationship of peace with every person in the world. Obviously, if I'm being physically attacked, that gets a little bit more complicated. That's maybe for another topic, and that's a deeper one, but which unfortunately is a part of a lot of people's lives, on planet Earth. And I've certainly experienced that myself as well. But I think that in the day-to-day, it's important to remember that we get to decide. Well, I believe that there's liberty to decide in our human relationships who we pursue peace with and who we pursue intimacy with. You won't find an exhortation in Scripture, well, at least I haven't found one, where there's an exhortation to, in so much as it depends on you, develop a deep, trusting, intimate relationship with every human being on the planet. So peace, mandatory, required. Depth of intimacy and trust, I think that's another thing. That's something that we get to pursue. And so people are always wondering, what should I do? What should I do? My leader did this. What should I do? My team member did this. What should I do? My daughter did this. My spouse did this. My girlfriend did this. What should I do? And my question is always immediately, what do you want? And they look at me like, what do you mean, what do I want? I want to know what I should do. And I'm going, well, there is no such thing as should if you haven't, because genuine love, real love, is not motivated by trying to do the right thing. Like, imagine how disastrous that would be to find out that God is just trying to do the right thing. It's just like trying to tick a box, like all of his love for you as an individual, Seth, was actually God just like, am I doing the right thing here? Like, have I got this right? The only reason God's love, what gives God's love so much meaning is that he doesn't have to love you. He's not trying to satisfy some kind of moral code. Like, he's completely free to be God and genuinely loves you. He genuinely desires you, desires connection with you. There's no box ticking going on here. So for our love to be authentic for people, it has to be coming from a place of freedom, and it has to be free from coercion. It has to be motivated through desire. So, so I'm asking people, what do you want? Would you be happy with peace with this person, or would you be happy with intimacy? So I'm, fairly frequently, I've got guys who I'm mentoring or guys who I'm mentoring to mentor others. And they're like, should I be honest with my wife about what I'm really struggling with behind the scenes? And I'm going, what kind of relationship do you want to have with her? Are you going after distance and maybe some semblance of peace? Then maybe that's not necessary. Are you actually going after a connection of any real depth of intimacy? Then yeah, you're gonna want to be honest, about that. So I think of it, I like to use the metaphor. It's like, do we need bananas? Like, should I buy bananas? Should I buy flour? Well, what are you going to make? You got to decide what you're trying to make first. Cora and I we've worked really hard at this. We're basically I've got to decide for me, what kind of relationship do I want to have with her? And she's got to decide what kind of relationship she wants to have with me. And we can't answer that question for each other. I've got to answer that for me. She's got to answer that for her. And then that determines the ingredients. It's like, okay, well, let's make banana pancakes. Okay, awesome. You're definitely going to need some bananas. So we've decided we're not going after peace in our,
surface level peace.
Exactly. You got to start with peace. You can't build peace on top of intimacy. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to start with peace, and then you can potentially build intimacy on top of that. So first and foremost, we're going after peace, but we're going after so much more than that. So that we know in our relationship, that is going to involve a lot of truth telling, and you can't do that with everybody. I've got the people who matter most to me, and I've decided who those people are. I'm not letting life just decide that for me. I've been very deliberate about the people who matter most to me, and those people they're going to get the most brutally honest version of me. And that's probably part of why they matter so much to me. I mean, my kids matter so much to me because they're my kids, but in terms of friendships, like, the people who matter the most to me are generally going to be the people who can handle the truth. It's like, how much of me can really show up in this relationship? What if I told you the full truth of what I'm experiencing in this connection? And you know what? Not everybody's up for it. And that's completely fine. I'm not entitled to an intimate relationship with anybody. That's what makes it so incredibly meaningful, when someone chooses me as much as I choose them, in terms of those exchanges of truth.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I love that. I love what you're saying. When you're talking about, you choose between peace and you choose between intimacy.
Yeah.
Do you believe there are other options that you can choose that are like unbiblical? As in, like,
oh yeah, you could choose contention.
Yeah, Exactly, right? Yeah.
Totally. Which you might not do consciously,
Right.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just gonna say, you know, one of the commandments,
Yeah.
is love. But are you suggesting that this love can manifest in peace,
Yeah.
which is, not an in-depth intimacy, which we're not commanded to have with everybody, but a surface level, we're at peace with the people.
Yeah.
But we have the authority to choose who we want to have intimacy with, but all is encapsulated in the commandment of love.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And love, I love In-N-Out Burger, and I also love my wife. And so, that word has to be unpacked a little bit. It's funny in English. English is a crazy big language. Like the volume of words we have is just, absolutely extraordinary. We're constantly inventing. There's probably been 10 words invented over the course of the last 30 minutes while you and I have been talking. But still, this word love is sort of this catch-all kind of word, and it has to be unpacked because it can have very, very different meanings. And so the short answer to what you said, I would agree with that perspective. I think what I've observed in my own journey and certainly in the lives of people who I've had the privilege of journeying alongside is that often we would never wake up and be like, I'm just going to try, I'm going to go after contention, see what that feels like. I don't know, like maybe a relationship of contention with Seth might be fun. Like we don't do that deliberately, but I think we can, often what happens is we don't know how to conduct ourselves. We're not sure which tools to use because we haven't first made a conscious choice as to what we want for the relationship. Usually it's because we feel trapped. That I think is, that's where so much pain and contention and incredibly unhealthy, destructive behavior. And I mean, the dumbest things I've done, where I've done something that in so many ways is just utterly insane, like snap at one of my kids and react in a way that is, abrasive verbally. Praise God, I don't do that very much anymore. But I think a lot of that is early on, if that's happened and I feel so, it is just so incredibly bizarre. That given my values, given how deeply I love these children, it just makes absolutely no sense to do something that is so profoundly self-destructive towards my family, which is actually, at the pinnacle of what I value in life. It's like, why would we do that? Why would somebody do that? Like Paul talks about, I do the thing I hate, and I think it starts with the belief that we are trapped in a situation. And when we feel we're trapped, when we believe that we are trapped, when we believe that we are under threat of punishment or whatever, for whatever reason, we feel trapped. That's our perception. We act like a trapped animal, that moves towards self-defense. And so I think that that's why the parable, that's why the garden, that whole picture of the Garden of Eden, and God just plops this choice right in the middle of the whole thing. It's like absolute foundation of this journey of man and God is choice. Is this idea that you have been given a measure of power, and the question is, what will you do with it? What will you do with that choice that you have? And so we have tried our best, mostly successfully, but we still hold each other accountable to completely remove the terms I have to and I can't from our vocabulary. And some people kind of interpret that as like this kind of hyper, like classically American hyper optimism. And I'm going, no, is definitely not that at all. I actually think life is like can be and is occasionally brutal and painful and disappointing and downright awful. Like pain and, suffering are a part of life. So I don't think I mean, I probably have some rose-colored glasses. I am a pretty optimistic sort of a dude naturally. But this has more to do with recognizing that if I allow myself to believe that I am trapped, I am gonna be able to excuse some awful behavior. And I've shocked myself. I've certainly been shocked by others as well, people who I know love Jesus, and I know I love Jesus, but I've like shocked myself at the kind of thing I will do in my worst moment. And so people are like, well, yeah, but you have to take care of your kids. You have to. And I'm like, no, you don't. People abandon their children all the time. Well, I have to work, to make money. I'm like, no, you don't. You could quit your job and be a homeless person in Hawaii. I was actually just a few weeks ago, connecting with a homeless guy in Hawaii who's chosen to be there, and sleeps, as far as I can tell, pretty comfortably on the beach most nights. Like that's obviously he's been through a painful journey, but you get the point I'm trying to make is that if you're doing something because you have to, it actually really loses its meaning, and so recognizing whatever that it is, I'm working in this job because I love my family, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm not abandoning my kids because my kids are important to me, but you have to recognize the choice that we have. In order for those expressions of love to be meaningful. And as people begin to discover how powerful they actually are and the choice that they have, we're not all powerful by any means, but you got a little bit, and the question is, what will you do with that? And and then you go, okay, what kind of relationship do I want to have with people? And then you start being much more deliberate about how you conduct yourself. And hopefully much more willing to take responsibility for whatever it is that you are bringing into every single relationship that you have. I can't even remember what you first said. I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
That was probably a massive tangent.
No, it's good. No, what I'm hearing a lot of is freedom, and that perspective that we have freedom, that we're not locked into certain choices. Yeah. That's really significant, because when we choose love, it becomes real love. It's authentic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that's one of the great problems we're seeing, perhaps in maybe a cookie cutter society, especially within the West, where you have to go to school after high school, or you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. Do you think that's perhaps causing people to lose a part of meaning in their decisions in their life?
No, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, it's like, I'm really blessed to have had a dad who's kind of a classically Kiwi guy who, how do I put this delicately? He's not like, certainly not like looking around like, what am I allowed to do and not allowed to do? Like my dad he's a pretty robust, he's a bit of a cowboy, in that sense. And so there's moments where, you'd get into trouble, like, I'm not sure how to put that, but the point I'm making is that Dad, he liked giving us freedom. That's probably the best way to put it. People might think my dad was nuts with how much freedom he gave. And looking back on my childhood, there's times where I'm like, man, a little bit more structure might have been nice, actually. A little bit more rules might have been good. For my 8th birthday, he bought me, because as a family, we're into free diving. And to this day, that's really surfing and free diving, spearfishing. That's really my favorite stuff to do for fun. And so when I was my 8th birthday, present was a dive knife with this massive, well, it's probably like a 10-inch serrated blade. Like who buys something like that for my mom was probably totally horrified. But the point there was I think for Dad it was a big deal he wanted us to learn how to steward freedom. And so, to the degree that we are, and I also grew up in LA though, under the intensity and the restriction of this constant feeling of, everything, unless there's a sign saying you probably can't. We'd go to New Zealand as kids, and then we'd come back to LA and our friends would ask us what it's like. And I would say, how around here in LA, if there isn't a sign saying you probably can't. In New Zealand, it's kind of the opposite. Now, a lot of Kiwis would say that it's tragic, this is changing. But in New Zealand, it's kind of the opposite. Unless there's a sign specifically saying you can't, you probably can. That's what it felt like for us as kids. We just go out into the bush and so to the degree that we are raised in an environment of fear and anxiety and control, and you're just dealing with negotiating your way through all of these different layers of authority, and some of them are benevolent and helpful and protective, some of them are oppressive and fear-based, and then you get into your adult years and you get somebody like me coming around going, what will you choose in this relationship? And it's like, what will I choose? What in the world does choice have to do with it? Like I'm 32 years old, and now you're trying to tell me, you're helping me in my relationship with my wife or something, and you're trying to tell me I have a choice. Like it's like I have very little grid for that because of the layers of control that we were raised in. And the world's a big place. I know I was with a young Canadian lady who was on a school that I was teaching on a couple of years ago. And she grew up in a town of 8. No, her family had 8 people. The town was like 22 people. There was two families in this place. And between the two families, they owned, I can't even remember what she said. It was like thousands of acres of land. And I listened to her talk to me about her childhood. I mean, man, like sitting down with her being like, oh, what will you choose? Like she totally had a grid for choice, because she grew up in this incredibly cool environment. I found that really, really awesome. So yeah, I do think that it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. And I think Jesus was, what is that? Where is that story? I know it's probably in a couple different of the Gospels. I know it's at least in one of them where Jesus goes to the blind man on the side of the road. And it's so obvious what the guy wants and needs. And Jesus goes, what can I do for you? He gives the guy a choice. And I just find I love that story so much. Because essentially what Jesus is affirming there is the power that this person has. Yeah. And you'd think, well, this guy doesn't have any power. He just needs to be rescued. And Jesus is like, I want to know what this guy wants. He's got power. I wonder what's in there, So yeah. Yeah, I guess those would be my thoughts and reflections on that.
That's fantastic. I think I'm relating it even to our decision to follow God.
Totally.
In our relationship with Him.
Yeah.
I know so many people, and I think most people who are especially raised in the church can testify that your relationship with God begins as do's and don'ts. Yep. Make sure you do this, make sure you don't do that, And there has to be a particular moment where we break free from that mentality, know. I'm just curious, even in the way that you raised your own children, did you have like a, hey guys, don't do this, some may argue that rules are a good thing. They protect us, sure. Perhaps maybe what you'll suggest, I'm just wondering, is that you're just letting them know the consequences and that they can make a decision, but there will be consequences,
Absolutely.
But like, even as you, as a father, where's that balance between like, you have a choice, but you don't have a choice, you know, and then relating it to your relationship with God, you know, you have a choice, but there are good choices and there are bad choices.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a group of, there's a group called Loving on Purpose, a ministry called Loving on Purpose, started by Danny and Sherry Silk. And we have just learned so much from these guys. We're so grateful. We got a hold of their book, Loving Our Kids on Purpose. My friend Ben handed me this book. Probably was watching the way I was raising my toddlers and was like, dude, you're gonna, give yourself an aneurysm. You really need to, shift the way you're doing this. And it was such a helpful resource, and I highly, highly recommend it. But I love the way Danny puts it. He's like, I'm here to tell you, you have a choice here. One of these choices leads to something really, really awesome, and the other choice leads to something really dumb. And I was just doing this, an hour ago. We're homeschooling our kids this year as we're traveling around the world and helping to kind of expand what we do with Restoring Connections. And it's like, yeah, my 7-year-old, she's having a tough morning. She's got a super, stinky attitude about the whole thing. And it's like, oh yeah, I thought you might do that. I thought that might happen. And I've got a plan for that. Because really usually the moments where I feel most tempted to just, I flip, like I lose the plot, and as a parent, is when I didn't have a plan for that. I didn't think that through. And because of that, I feel trapped. My toddler is having a tantrum, and now I'm having a tantrum. Now we're both having a tantrum because they feel trapped and I feel trapped, and we're both bidding for control in this situation. So we're trying to get to the point where you are in control of you, and you're exercising control over you, and I'm exercising control over me. So we're constantly trying to reaffirm that dynamic. And so naturally, the child starts out as a newborn baby that has zero control, can't even control its own bowel movements, and will die if we don't exercise absolute control, over that situation. We're not like, well, you've got a choice. You know what I mean? Like, it starts out as absolutely that way. And then later on in life, completely flips the other way to be absolutely the other way, where we have no absolute control, and any effort we make to absolutely control or exercise control over is really destructive for the relationship. And so right there you can see, okay, there's a continuum. So there's no simple answer for the question that you raised. It's a matter of discerning in wisdom where we're at in that continuum, which Cora and I are wrestling with all the time. But we're wrestling with, we're always defaulting to how much freedom can we give away? Like, that we're trying to, because that's what we sense our Heavenly Father doing with us all the time. It's like, oh, I can't wait to give you more freedom. Like, I just want to give all the freedom I possibly can. Ultimately, we dream of the day where our kids are completely, where we have this beautiful relationship of, it's completely based on freedom, like I have with my parents right now. They have zero control over my life, and so the connection that we have is coming from a place of total freedom. And so yeah, we're wrestling with that stuff all the time, and we're navigating, here are the choices that you have. And we're asking that question all the time, like, what, here, you could do this or you could do that, and here's what we think the consequences are of both. So do we say to our 2.5-year-old, when we had a 2.5-year-old, do we say, you can walk into oncoming traffic, you can cross the road whenever you like, or you can stick with mom and dad? No, that would be ridiculous. But so they're obviously exercising control in that dynamic. But I might say, if you throw a huge tantrum when I hold you back from ongoing traffic, we might not get an ice cream later on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I'm thinking that through, punishments are a really blunt instrument. It's like, do something that I don't like and I'll hit you. That's a really blunt instrument and not particularly helpful for developing intimate connection. So it takes creativity to think through, okay, how do I connect this? What would happen in my life if I do something really dumb? I don't get a big hand coming out of the sky and slapping me like you and calling me an idiot. I just experience the natural. If I'm terrible with my money, I run out of money. If I don't take care of my house, if I stop, you know what I mean? Like the place goes to custard. It's like if I don't take care of my relationships, I end up isolated. So we're always trying to think about how do we, with our kids, how do we create a dynamic where there's the consequence that they experience is connected. It's not abstract. It's not some random punishment. It's like people do this with screen time all the time. It's like, you can do this, and so I'll reward you with the screen, more screen time, or I take it away, and we use that as leverage because it works. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong all the time, but I think it's more helpful for us to be really thinking about, okay, you don't have to apologize to your brother. You just did something totally awful to your little brother. I'm not going to say you have to apologize to your brother or I'm going to hit you, or you have to apologize to your brother. I'm going to, there's two ways this goes about. What happens as an adult if you make messes that you don't clean up? You end up isolated. So I might say, no problem. If you don't want to make this right with your sibling, that's totally fine. Later on this evening, we're going to have a time as a family of watching a movie, playing some games, having some ice cream. That's specifically for people who are willing to clean up their messes. That's an environment for those kind of people. Love you, absolutely adore you, think you're the best thing that happened since sliced bread. I really hope that you are up for joining us for that, but there's a requirement there. There is a requirement, and my love isn't on the line.
Yeah.
But some degree of connection with me is on the line. And I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of sounds like the gospel. My understanding of the gospel. You know what I mean? God's love for us isn't on the line, but our invitation to party is kind of on the line, depending on how we will respond to the situation. So it's like, hey, no worries. Take all the time you need. We'll miss you. But there is an environment here where, and the more me and Cora kind of create Eden, the more we work to create heaven, like on earth, the more leverage there is to go, yeah, we're doing some pretty cool stuff as a family here. Like this, it rocks to be, rock and rolling. But there are certain choices, like this is for those of us in the family that, and you might not be up for it. You might just be in too much pain and anger and frustration today to be able to rock and roll with the family, and that is totally fine. Tomorrow's a fresh day, And sometimes I'm not up for it. Sometimes like Dad needs a timeout. I'm just like the kids will look at me and be like, "Let me know when you're ready to have a respectful conversation, Dad." And I'm like, "Thank you, I will," because timeout, Dad. Like I am not good for anybody right now. I need to go deal with me. And I'm like, yes, I want my kids. Especially my daughters. I really want my daughters to cultivate the ability to say to a man, let me know when you're ready to have a respectful conversation. I'm like, yes, that is a tool that I want them to have. And they can start that with learning with me, because I am occasionally disrespectful, for sure. I get sarcastic. That's my thing when I'm not well, when I'm frustrated about something, rather than just it's the passive aggressive thing. So my kids have, learned it's like when Dad gets passive aggressive and sarcastic, it's like, hey, Dad, no thanks. Let us know when you're ready to have a respectful conversation again. Yeah.
Yeah. I thank you for that. I guess I got one more question. We have a little bit of more time.
Well, I could talk about this stuff all day, every day.
I can tell. I love that. Yes. You are traveling the world talking about it. So there you go. Yeah. I guess my question was when there's a lack of comprehension of the consequence.
Sure.
You know, I guess what you kind of discussed it in the sense that like you try and make it as known as possible.
Yeah.
But when we use the toddler example, you know, and you say to the toddler, "Don't run on traffic. You're gonna get killed if you run on traffic."
Yeah, sure.
The toddler doesn't know what that means.
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
Now you did suggest using language they will understand. We won't go get an ice cream. You know, but like how you know, and we talked about confusion. If we're confused, we don't even know that we're experiencing consequences as a result of our actions.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
what is the best way to handle that? You know,
Totally. In an adult relationship, or in a parent to child relationship, or are you looking for principles that would span the...
I think I was looking for principles, but I think also
Yeah.
we can focus on like even adults, like because
Yeah,
there's
sure.
so many people out there that are hurting, but they don't
Yeah.
even know they're
Totally.
hurting. You
Absolutely.
know? Yeah.
When we talk about boundaries, we have one of the points in our curriculum. All of our curriculum that we put together is all action based. It's all, you know, these are practices that we've found incredibly helpful. And one of them, when it comes to communicating boundaries, is I communicate boundaries with kindness and confidence, or not at all. Right. And so yeah, I mean, because we all know what that feels like. Well, you know, I think most of us, I wish we didn't all know what this feels like, because it feels terrible, but I think most of us will recognize, you know, that feeling of you're running into a wall with someone who you're trying to have a connection with, and you don't know what's going on. Where is the front door? You know, I'm getting a brick wall here, and I don't know how to get through. I have all this, what I feel is genuine love for you. I'm like, I think friendship with me is worth it. You know, like I think I've got treasure here to offer, but you don't want it. You know, and so I'm experiencing a bit of a wall here, and in that regard, like when that's the case, there isn't a whole lot. If I'm running into a wall with you, there isn't a whole lot I certainly can't force you to clarify for me, like, what is going on. What I can ask, I can let you know how I'm feeling. I can say, hey, I'm trying to get through here. You know, I want to have a deeper connection with you, but I'm feeling pushed away, and give you an opportunity. But even then, there's no guarantees. You might say, no, everything's fine, whatever. Nope, no wall. And I might go, wow, now I feel even more confused, you know, about, you know, and maybe even in more pain. And that's you're in the driver's seat as to how much, you know, that's a choice on your side. But hopefully when we go through situations like that, it sensitizes us to not doing that to people that we love. You know, I like me experiencing that with others has helped me to realize, shoot, I definitely have a, you know, I can do that, like on a, you know, the punk, selfish, passive-aggressive version of me can do that to people. And it's sensitized me to not wanting, because you know, that would be the dark side, you know, of what I wrestle through. And I'm talking a lot about the things I wrestle with. I think most of the time I'm a pretty nice person, but since the topic, you know, but you know, that whole like punish the person with distance. You know, I'm not the type of person to get really domineering and aggressive and say like, what the heck is wrong with you? You know, I'm more the type of person to sort of distance myself and maybe keep a smile on, but kind of, you know, punish you with distance. And going through that with others has really helped sensitize me to how painful that can be for people. And so I try really, really hard not to do that to people. So yeah, I think that, I mean, when it comes to a little kid, they're going to need to experience that. You know, they're like a little kid can't even, you're on an airplane and it's like, we'll be there in 2 hours. Like, what the heck is 2 hours? You know what I mean? Like there's just now, and I have a no grid for anything else. And so they're going to have to experience not getting the ice cream. They might have to experience it 10 times, you know, before they, we used we used one. We've been doing a lot of long car trips as we're basically doing this tour around the world as a family, and we told the kids, we got this from our friend Brittany, her and her husband. So Ben and Brittany Serpel are Danny and Sherry. Brittany is Danny and Sherry's daughter, and Ben is an Australian guy that she married. And they told this story about, where the kids were fighting so much in the car, and then they basically pulled into a what do we call them, petrol stations back home? What do we call
like a gas station?
A gas station. Yeah, pulled into a gas station and then just basically got themselves ice creams and just ate them in front of the kids.
No way.
It's like not a punishment, but they basically just explained it is so stress inducing. Like the way you guys communicate with each other, like, no problem. You guys can do that if you want, but I'm going to need an ice cream to recover. And so, we were just doing, we just used that. And it just, there's a beauty in it. Like the kids get it. The kids, because we're humans, like we don't want to raise narcissistic freaks. Like mom and dad are human beings with feelings. We're not infinite in our capacity, like it hurts. And so we told the kids, like, hey, not going to beg you to be kind to each other, and to not drive each other nuts. Like if that's how you want to roll, if that's the kind of car trip you guys want to have, go for it. But when that happens, if it happens, we've got a plan for that. And I'm thinking, yeah, like that would probably work. I think I'll feel okay. Like they can they can argue, drive each other nuts. And then as long as every once in a while I can pull over and I can have a coffee and have an ice cream or something like that and just recover from that, it will probably put me back in a position where I can get back to manifesting the fruit of the Spirit. And of course, when you unpack it like that, the kids are like, oh, mom and dad are humans. Like, and actually, like, that sounds terrible. Like, we don't want to experience that. We don't want to sit here while mom and dad are eating ice cream. Like, that totally sucks. And so they made awesome choices, and we had a really peaceful ride the whole way there. And so I think that, yeah, I'd come back again to that principle. We communicate boundaries. We don't want to be like, oh, like, if you do that again, I'm going to have to do this, and I'm going to have, it's like, you got to think like if the conversation is out of control, time out, get yourself back into control of yourself, maybe consult with a friend, think through what are the boundaries that you might need, and you might not, or sometimes a boundary doesn't need to be communicated at all. It's like, I'm not having one of these stupid conversations with you again. It's like, there's really no value in communicating that. It's just better actually done than said. You know what I mean? You just think that through, get the coaching that you need, get the mentoring that you need, get the help that you need. Next time it's like, oh, okay, here we go again. We're going back to that same old conversation. Time out. Hey, you know what? I'm not up for this conversation right now. Doesn't feel very good. I'm not feeling very respected. I'm gonna remove myself. Let me know when you're ready to have a respectful conversation again. That kind of thing. Yeah. And so you're thinking through, is this a boundary that should be communicated? If I'm going to communicate it, let's make sure I can communicate it with kindness, not reactively, and with confidence, not like, oh, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to, please don't hate me. Like the boundary isn't to protect you. It's not something that really, the boundary is actually to protect the connection. It's for both of us. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's to protect whatever level of connection there still is between us. So we don't communicate boundaries apologetically. You communicate boundaries because there's conviction that it's healthy. It's healthy for you. It's healthy for the other person. You communicate it with kindness. And if you're not in a position to be able to do that, it's better left unsaid. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you that you shared that. It touched me a lot too. And I'm really appreciative of you being here.
Oh, thanks, Seth. I love the opportunity to talk about these things. We're learning all the time. That's my invitation to anybody out there to listen to this stuff. And it's like, what about this and what about that? Bring it on, dude. Yeah. We're learning, we're growing. and we like to see these things challenged and pushed back on as well. That's our passion, is just to learn and grow in this area. What does it look like to heal and strengthen our most important relationships?
Me, please come and evict this enemy from my life. And then kicking him out the door, close the door, no entrance. He'll come back knocking again. He'll try again. That's how he is. The enemy wants to come in. He doesn't like to be kicked out.